Big Chief, like, hell has frozen over.
So, just for the record, sorry about all that stuff I said about
He was just kidding.
I wasn't talking about you guys.
Big Chief is not coming back to Street Outlaws, and the real reason is far more complicated than fans expected. For years, Justin Shearer was the face and foundation of Street Outlaws, shaping the list and the culture that made the show a hit. Then, without warning, he was gone, and rumors quickly filled the silence. But the truth behind his exit tells a very different story. So what actually forced Big Chief out of Street Outlaws? And why has his return become almost impossible? Join us as we reveal why Big Chief's time on Street Outlaws is truly over. The Kid from Louisville. The year 1992 was the first time 12-year-old Justin discovered the world that would define the rest of his life. He started riding his bike to watch races on Old Route 66. He was not old enough to drive, and he was watching cars run in the dark, learning the physics and the culture of street racing from the sidelines before he was old enough to stand in a start box. His first car purchase was a 1972 Pontiac Le Mans, which he nicknamed the Crow. The name became one of the most recognizable in the racing world, a piece of iconography associated entirely with the man behind the wheel. He lost a race early in his life to a Chevy Beretta and described later that the humiliation of that loss became the fuel for everything that followed. He made a vow that he would build a car that could not be beaten by a Beretta. And by the time he was an adult, that vow had become something considerably more serious than a car that could outrun one specific opponent. By his 20s, Big Chief had earned a reputation in Oklahoma City's street racing community that did not require television to validate it. He was respected as a driver, feared as a competitor, and trusted as someone who understood and upheld the unwritten code that governed how street racing was supposed to work. Who races who challenges whom, what the rules are when no rule book exists, how disputes are settled without officials, how integrity is maintained in a world where nothing is official. Those are not small things in a community where your reputation is the only currency that matters. He met Sean Ellington, better known as Murder Nova, and the two formed a business partnership around Midwest Street Cars Automotive in Oklahoma City, a shop that became the physical headquarters of their racing operations and later a cultural landmark for fans who came from all over the country to see the real-world operation behind what they watched on screen. The partnership between Big Chief and Sean was as central to the DNA of Street Outlaws as any individual element of the show. When the Discovery Channel came calling, it was not because they had invented Big Chief. It was because someone with a camera had figured out that what already existed in Oklahoma City was more interesting than anything they could manufacture. A company called 1320 Video had been filming street races and distributing them online. And when those clips went viral, the network came looking for the people in them. Big Chief has said that nobody, including the show's own producers, believed it would last past the first season. They filmed it without any expectation of success and without any reason to hold back. And that lack of filter was exactly what made it work. Street Outlaws premiered on the Discovery Channel on June 10, 2013, and became one of the most successful reality television launches the network had ever executed.
We don't normally build cars from scratch. We need to go fast.
The audience came for the cars and stayed for the people. And the most magnetic person in the show was the one who had been doing this his entire adult life, without any intention of becoming a celebrity. If that origin story sounds like the setup for a triumphant, uninterrupted success story, what happened that turned the architect of Street Outlaws into someone who walked away from the show he built? The collateral damage. Before the show ever became a point of conflict, life was already extracting a significant price from the man who had made it possible. Two things happened in Big Chief's personal life that reshaped everything that followed, and neither of them had anything to do with production companies or network politics. The first was the death of Tyler Pretty, known to the Street Outlaws community as Flip. Flip was Big Chief's closest friend. They had grown up in the racing world together, and Flip appeared in the very first season of Street Outlaws alongside his 1980 Chevy El Camino, a car he named the Old Slut. He died in 2013 at the age of 31, shortly before the show's premiere, under circumstances that were never fully confirmed publicly. His family made clear that his death was not connected to racing. Big Chief wrote about Flip in 2017 with the kind of raw grief that does not diminish with time. He said he missed him more than anyone would ever understand. He had not been the same since Flip left, and that he had been learning to respect his decision, whatever that decision was.
What are you doing? You're standing here looking at the car like a weirdo.
I'm talking to it.
What is it saying?
I don't know. I'm just standing here reflecting on the past and thinking about the future.
He said he never knew what it felt like to love and lose until then, and that he was unfortunately becoming an expert on the subject. Then came the crash that should have killed him. On November 14, 2015, during the filming of a Street Outlaws episode, Big Chief was racing Brian Davis, known as Chucky, when Davis's Fox Body Mustang got loose and tagged the rear quarter panel of the Crow at high speed. Big Chief's 1972 Pontiac Le Mans flipped end over end and landed in a ditch. The car was completely destroyed. When he was able to communicate from the hospital, he told fans he had bruised both lungs, crushed his L2 and L3 vertebrae in his back, broken his collarbone, and was on oxygen and receiving breathing treatments. He described himself as pretty beat up, but so thankful to be alive. He also said he demanded someone read him the bang shift coverage of the crash so he could understand how bad it was, because the hospital had not told him. That detail alone says something specific about who he is. He wrote a tribute to the Crow that circulated widely across the racing community, calling the car his first love and his first addiction, noting that it might not have been the last car he raced, but it would always be the first. The cage and safety equipment, he said, saved his life. He gradually recovered from the crash, both physically and mentally, built new cars, and went back to racing. But the recovery happened inside a marriage that was already under strain. Justin Shearer and Alicia Shearer had been together since he was 18 years old, having met at the full-service gas station where he worked when she came in to fill her tank. They married in September 2006 and had 2 sons, Corbin and Koval. For years, the marriage appeared stable from the outside, and Alicia maintained enough of a private presence that most fans simply accepted the family as part of the background of the show. Then in 2017, when Big Chief began appearing on Street Outlaws alongside fellow racer Jackie Brosh, rumors began circulating about the state of the marriage. He addressed it directly on the Chief and Sean Show podcast, saying without ambiguity that he and Alicia were getting a divorce, that it was happening, and that it was further than just having trouble. He was clear that the breakup was not caused by the presence of someone else, but by the cumulative weight of a marriage that had not survived the person he became when the cameras showed up. Alicia stepped away from public view entirely after the divorce and focused on her career as a respiratory therapist, raising their sons in Mustang, Oklahoma. Big Chief, on the other hand, began a relationship with Jackie Brosh, a professional drag racer who shared his passion for the sport and who has described her own relationship with cars as beginning at birth, her father having been involved in motorsports since she was a baby. The divorce was painful and public in the specific way that everything about a reality television celebrity's life is public, meaning it became content
Everyone out here expected me to fail, but here I am, I'm doing it, and all the haters can go to hell. Beat by Reaper, first round. That cannot happen. And I am more nervous for first round.
Even when the person involved was doing everything possible to keep it private. Big Chief navigated it with more decency than many would have managed in the same circumstances. If the personal losses of that period defined one dimension of what was changing in Big Chief's life, what was happening simultaneously with the show he had built? And why did it eventually become something he felt he could no longer be part of? The show outgrew what it was built on. Street Outlaws was not supposed to become what it became. By the admission of everyone involved in the original seasons, including Big Chief himself, the expectation was 12 episodes and done. What the Discovery Channel got instead was a monster, and monster franchises have a specific tendency to eat the thing that made them possible. By the time the network had run 15 seasons of the original show and launched spin-offs including No Prep Kings, Memphis Street Outlaws, New Orleans, and America's List, the Street Outlaws brand had been stretched across a format that was fundamentally different from the one that made it valuable. The original show was built around one specific racing community in Oklahoma City, around the list, around a set of values and rules that the racers themselves had established over decades. It was raw, it was specific, and it was built on the credibility of the people in it. No Prep Kings took that credibility and monetized it at events that Big Chief described as increasingly disconnected from street racing. He was not particularly interested in the no prep format to begin with, occasionally participating to gather data for his car builds, but generally steering clear of events that he felt moved away from what the original show had been. Then came the change to America's List that crossed a line he was not willing to cross. In March 2022, Big Chief posted a video on the Midwest Street Cars YouTube channel laying out his reasons for leaving. He said that the direction things were going, the changes being made, and the way things were being done did not resemble something he helped build. He said he had to make the decision that he could not stand up there and defend rules and decisions that he did not make and did not agree with. He described preferring the show to stay as street as possible, focused on racing rather than produced drama between cast members. He specifically named discomfort, with production amplifying conflicts between racers for entertainment value, a complaint that makes complete sense when you understand that the person making the complaint was the one who helped build the community being dramatized. The specific policy dispute that became the final straw was a format change that introduced a race your way in mechanism for America's List, which Big Chief felt gave an unfair structural advantage to racers from Memphis and other regions over the OKC racers who had built the show's foundational audience. He was also in dispute with fellow racer Precious Cooper over rules applications on set, a conflict that escalated when Jackie Brosh was drawn into it. The combination of the policy disagreement and the on-set friction created an environment the Chief described as unrecognizable compared to what he had helped build. His absence from the show had begun before the video, stretching back through multiple seasons in which fans noticed he was simply not there. There was no announcement, no farewell episode, no final race with his name attached to a send-off. What makes the situation even more painful is the lack of closure. He simply vanished from the show, leaving fans in emotional limbo, hoping for a return that would never come. The video was not a return. It was an explanation delivered after the fact from someone who had already made the decision and was now providing the reasoning behind it. Cast member James Goad, known as Reaper, posted a response video questioning Big Chief's account and challenging his characterization of the situation. That the response came at all, and came publicly, suggested that the reasons behind the departure were more complicated than any single clean narrative could contain. These things usually are. Meanwhile, the show continued without him. Murder Nova Ryan Martin remained, and the No Prep Kings format kept going. The franchise did not collapse in his absence, which is either evidence that it had genuinely evolved past the point of needing him, or evidence that it had already become something so different from the original that his absence was less disruptive than it would have been in earlier seasons. What Big Chief actually confirmed in leaving was something that nobody who loved the original show wanted to hear. The show had changed in ways that could not be changed back. If the end of his television chapter was this complete and this definitive, what happened to the Street Outlaws world itself? And what does Big Chief's position look like in the context of everything that has unfolded since? The end of the era he built. In late 2025, Speed Promotions Racing canceled the final races of its 2025 season, effectively ending the Street Outlaws era as a structured competitive circuit. After 15 seasons of the original show and countless spin-offs, the franchise found itself at a crossroads with no television deal currently in place, and fewer contracts being offered, leaving the original cast members to decide how to proceed. The structure that replaced the original show had itself now run its course. Corey Harrison, the show's original co-host alongside his father Rick on Pawn Stars, is the relevant parallel here. Like Corey, who moved to Tulum, Mexico in September 2024 and told producers he would not return. The original cast members of Street Outlaws were making peace with the reality that the era they had occupied was over. The original Street Outlaws 405 show was not coming back in its original form. The franchise was not reverting to its roots, and Big Chief, who had built those roots, was not returning to a structure that no longer existed. The Crow Mod, his iconic Pontiac Firebird that he had raced for nearly a decade, and that had become one of the most well-known race cars of the past quarter century, was sold to a Houston-based racing team in 2025. Texas grudge racer Tyler Lohman described being called by Shearer, who said he knew people who were looking for a lightweight Pro Mod car, gave a number and a list of details, and said if Lohman knew anyone interested to let him know. The Crow Mod's departure from his garage was not a dramatic announcement. It was a quiet closing of a chapter. What Big Chief chose instead of television was something he had always been able to do, and had simply been doing less of while the cameras were involved. He kept Midwest Street Cars, focusing the shop on its original purpose as a high-performance automotive operation in Oklahoma City. He expanded the Midwest Street Cars YouTube channel, which gives him direct access to his audience without network intermediaries or production company oversight. He continued racing on his own terms at events of his choosing, without the pressure of a story arc that production needs to resolve before the season finale. His partnership with Murder Nova in the Midwest Street Cars business, he said they had simply grown apart over the years and had changed the focus of their interests. He was focusing more on family and had entered a new collaborative venture with another racer known as Phantom. The split between two people who had been synonymous for nearly a decade was handled without the kind of public ugliness that their mutual departure from Street Outlaws might have suggested was inevitable. He and Jackie Brosh remained together, building their life around the cars and the racing culture that brought them both to the same corners of the same world in the first place. His two sons are growing up in Oklahoma City. The OKC street racing community that Big Chief helped build continues to exist independent of any television deal. Real racing communities do not require television to sustain themselves, and this one was functioning before the cameras arrived and will function after the cameras move on to the next thing. What Big Chief's departure from Street Outlaws ultimately represents the end of a specific promise that reality television makes and rarely keeps. The promise that it will document something real without changing it in the process. That promise almost always breaks. In the case of Street Outlaws, it broke with enough force that the man who built what was being promised decided he would rather have the real thing than a polished version of it. Do you think the Street Outlaws franchise ever truly recovered its identity after Big Chief left? And is there any version of events where he comes back that you would actually want to see? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.